Thank you guys for listening to our very first episode. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And I just want to start off today. You'll find that every episode will begin with a brief intro from myself, Erica Johnson-Allen, and a closure outro from the one and only Dr. Paul Miller. So I just want to share with you today something that has been heavy on my heart this entire week. The title of this episode is Who Am I? And over the last few days, I've really been asking myself that question, who really am I? With all of the political issues that's going on in our country right now, dealing with the Black Lives Matter movement, dealing with the injustices that our people of color typically see. My heart is heavy, and I've been burdened and just really trying to figure out, who am I? And so I'm beginning to draw the conclusion, I think I'm still discovering who I am, Paul. I think through all of this and just identifying and staying true to my culture, my belief system, I'm learning that who I used to be may not be who I am, and who I'm going to be is probably not who I am right now as well either. So self-discovery is huge for me right now. My heart is heavy. I have cried every single day for the last 3 weeks because I know that I'm not going through this by myself. This pain is heavy. This pain is hard. And so I just want to leave you with knowing that I understand this is a challenge that we're facing, and we're all trying to figure out how we're going to make a change for the better. So my challenge to you today is to eliminate the hate, because the root of all of this is hate. And if you feel hatred in any respect toward anyone, I'm asking that you check yourself, because we got into this problem because of hate, and we can't get out of this situation continuing to waddle in hate. So with that, again, the question of this episode today is, who am I? But before we dig deeper into the conversation, I'm going to let my wonderful co-host introduce himself. And again, as I said, this is Erica Johnson-Allen.
I'm Dr. Paul Miller, and I am the CEO of one of the best charter schools in the country. And I say that because we graduate all our young Black men at 95% or more. But I'm just, in awe of your intro. That was good stuff. It's kind of deep. It's good stuff to get started with laying it out there about everything that's going on. And I just can't wait till we can continue this conversation, and hopefully people will get some enlightenment, but also have a little bit of fun listening. I believe today we're going to talk about our personal self-reflections and our leadership journeys, and what did that look like, and just some analysis, some understanding, and maybe some alignment of who we wanted to be and who we want to be. And maybe we can make some connections to some relevant things that are happening right now. So let's go.
Perfect. So before we get started, and I think Dr. Miller just kind of opened the door for our first conversation and really digging deeper into who you are through self-reflection. But before we jump there, I do want to encourage you to please visit ericajohnsonallen.com. That is my personal website. You're going to find great information, tons of resources. And Dr. Miller, you want to give a shout out about your website?
Yeah, my personal website is paulmilleredd.com, and my consultant is urbaneeducation.com. So Urbane, it's like urban with an E, urbaneeducation.com.
Excellent. Stay tuned for our next episode entitled No Justice, No Peace, where we're going to dig deeper into the conversation about systemic racism and how it's impacting our community. So let's just go ahead and jump in, Dr. Miller. Self-reflection, like, what really is this? What's your take? What is self-reflection?
Self-reflection is you think about, and it's a constant process. So being self-reflective is, even if you reach a pinnacle in your career, it's taking time to listen to everybody, and listen to the good and the bad and the constructive, and then taking it in to yourself to see how you can use the different thoughts to improve. But self-reflection doesn't have to just be others' thoughts. It can be your own thoughts, and it also could be a spiritual connection. It can be a connection that you make with God, and you self-reflect to see if you're on the mission that you're supposed to be on. Are you on the right path? Are you doing what's meant for you to be doing?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what self-reflection means to me. You see it differently?
Well, I mean, I get that, right? So I understand that it's really reflecting on the voice of others through listening, and then reflecting on your own inside voice. And so I think, in summary, like, that's personal analysis, right? Like, really analyzing who you are personally. And we know that that's not the easiest thing in the world to do, especially no, not you. Absolutely not. It's tough though, right? But why? Why is that so hard for us to do? Why?
Because there's critics out there, but then when you got to internalize it and criticize yourself on top of it, that's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. To be reflective, but without that reflection, you won't find growth. It's like when you look in the mirror, you look to see if there's anything wrong. You look in the mirror. How do I look?
Yeah.
You want to see how you look, and then you can see, once you stare into yourself, you're able to see, and you're able to fix. Oh, my tie was tied wrong. But I had to look at it. If I didn't look at it, I wouldn't know.
So I think that's a valid point. Can we stay right there for just a second? You said when you look in the mirror, you self-reflect and you ask yourself what's wrong. And I think that's the key there, right? Why do we do that? What's wrong with saying, what's right about me? Why does self-reflection always have to begin with what's wrong? Internally, like, we just naturally do that as human beings. We're so critical of ourselves, but critical, does it always have to be in the negative context?
But I will. That
cancels out everything that was previously stated. Just saying.
But however,
Same thing. Go ahead. Conjunction.
So the growth comes from usually the gaps, right?
Absolutely.
So when you find a gap, is usually when the most growth happens. Usually when we're going through hard times in life, it's because it's a setup for something good that's coming, right? So that growth usually comes from the difficult times. Some people find growth in the good, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'm not telling you that we shouldn't celebrate, or that everyone out there who's listening shouldn't celebrate themselves or celebrate what's good about themselves. But if we're doing the real reflection, let's keep it real. That's when I feel like the most growth comes, is when you're looking at where the gaps are, what's wrong.
So, I agree. I agree with you 100%. I also think that we have to look at both sides of the coin, right? So yeah, absolutely. You figure out your gaps, which is a difficult thing to do. Mm-hmm. But then also, I always say, my mother, she was big on self-love. She used to always say, kiss yourself, baby. Tell yourself you love you. And I think we can't get away from that. Yeah, look at where I need to improve, but it's okay to take a step back sometimes and pat yourself on the back. And that's part of self-reflection too. Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. You want to talk a little bit about your personal journey, like what your like, how did you get where you are? Like, what reflection did it take? What's your personal reflections?
For sure.
You know,
Sure, I can answer that. Thinking about my personal journey, I'm an educator. I'm a superintendent at one of the largest charter districts in the state of Texas. Highly successful. Like I'm in a good place. How did I get there? It didn't start that way. I never wanted to be an educator. That was never part of my dream, goal, or destiny. But I was introduced to a classroom. And through self-reflection, I figured out that this was a calling that I had to answer. And so I think you're right. I never would have gotten to that point if I would not have accepted the fact that even though this isn't what I wanted to do, it seems as though I may be pretty good at it. So that's that pat myself on the back, working your strengths, working your gifts.
Okay.
And I continue to soar. It's a long journey. It's going to take about to really talk about the actual journey. But what I knew for sure is I had to help other children of color, and I had to help teachers understand the importance of educating our children.
Yeah, I think, that's important, is that that you have those values, and like it sounds like everything you do comes from those values, and those values are guiding your mission aligned, you're driven. And so I would like to say that's a good reason as to why you're successful and have been successful on that leadership journey, because you're sticking to those values.
Agree. So let's talk about values, since you brought up that great point.
Right.
What are your non-negotiables when you think about values? Like, what is it that no matter what, this is a non-negotiable in my life?
I think, and I'll put it in terms of professional and personal, but I believe in moral authority and I believe in competence, right? So whatever I do, I want to try to do it from the highest level of moral value. And do we fall short as people? Of course. Mm-hmm. But when that's the goal, you always come back to your morals and your values. You always come back to your core. And then the second piece is competence. Like, anything that I'm going to do, I want to be good at it. I want to be the best at it. I want to be successful. And so whether it's personal or professional, I think moral authority and competence leads out. That just lends me to thinking about the journey, and a little bit about the journey from the perspective of, when I first got 9 years ago, where I'm at currently, mm-hmm. I had this total different vision of what I thought was supposed to happen as getting in my first leadership role, where I was the head, mm-hmm. and where I was, I'm gonna do it my way, and you think about it, and I came from a place where they didn't put kids first, so I had this perspective of that no matter what, kids are always going to be first. Like, I have to put children first, and so I led with that. But the way I led with it also forgot that the adults who are working for me were people too.
Yeah.
And kind of was a turnoff. And I think it rubbed people the wrong way, just the way I think I approached it. And what I really realized is through that journey and through the self-reflection, because I had a couple people that were honest with me and said, yo, nah, man, the way you're doing it, you're really, you're causing more conflict than you're causing resolution. And so I had to look at that, and I said, what can I do to change that? And what can I do to be reflective? What can I do to be, more collaborative, and realize that people have a genuine care for kids, or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And so instead of coming up with defense, I came in and started to play offense. And what I realized is really that teachers are the heartbeat of the school.
Absolutely.
And so, and that the happier teachers are, the happier and healthier the heart is, all the other systems are going to work, right? So I figured out that they were the heartbeat of the school, and being the heartbeat of the school, they need to be treated like that. And so treating them like that turned into creating more teacher efficacy and to where they wanted to and believed and bought into the systems. And if they're happy, then the kids are going to be happy because they're happy. And so, I just think it's my journey and putting those values, and it goes back to the self-reflection piece as we were just discussing. I had to stop and reflect and kind of switch some things up so I could take 2 steps backwards to go forward and be more successful.
But Paul, what made you accept what those people were telling you? Right? Because you know how we are, especially when you get the title and the position. It's hard, number one, for people to be able to just come to you and feel free enough to speak truth, right? That's number one.
Right.
And then when you find people that can actually do that and have the substance to do that, being a leader and the one receiving it, that doesn't always happen. Right? So how do you accept what's being offered, even if it's not technically what you want to hear?
It was hard at first because at first when you move to a new city and a new job, you don't know who you can trust, right? Mm-hmm. So not knowing who you can trust, not knowing what people's intentions were, because you see people coming out of the woodworks with all different kind of thoughts and things and asks. And really it was about making that spiritual connection and talking to God and asking him, show me what I'm doing or not doing. And for me, it was like hearing that inner voice and just feeling at peace with what they were saying. And even though I didn't like it, I felt like it was what I needed to hear. And what I was doing wasn't working. So I had to take a step back and say, how do I do this differently?
Right.
And I think it was all like messages that I needed to hear.
Right. And that's something that I've learned, definitely the power of prayer, right? So before I start any meeting, I pray. Before I get on a stage to present at any time, I pray. And we were talking about the values. In my life, prayer is just, if not the most important element of my life, is definitely at the top, because I know that what it has done for me, right? Mm-hmm. So definitely prayer before everything, so that I don't screw it up and that people can hear God through me.
Yeah, that's because also you're from down south, so you probably bring grits with you everywhere too, right?
As long as they're hot.
Just don't throw them on nobody.
So, Paul, why do you act the way that you act? Give me some insight into why you are really who you are. Why do you act that way?
I think a lot has to do with my socialization process. Like I grew up in the middle of the projects. I grew up in the hood. But I also knew not to be complacent and want more and want to be able to do things different so I can lean back and give back. But I think a hunger developed in me of wanting more and wanting different. And so it developed out of growing up in poverty. It developed out of having struggles and strife. Like you said, that we got our stories that would take a lot more time. But those stories and that's who I am. And so to me, one of the best things and one of the things that I always recommend to people is not to lose who you are. Don't forget where you came from, because you got a little title behind your name doesn't mean you're any better or any different than anybody else. You need to treat people with respect. You need to, like when you're in the hood, you treat people with respect. And if you don't, you get dealt with. So you know what I mean? Absolutely. You gotta, you continue to treat people that way as you want to be treated, and don't forget who you are, and that's important to me. And yourself, like what makes you act the way you do.
Why do I act the way I do? Well, I've seen a lot, right? So when I was young, I lived in a 2-parent household, and my parents split apart, and we moved up north to get away from craziness. I've seen domestic violence, been a part of it, had a lot of challenges in my life, right? And so
y'all moved up north. Where y'all moved to?
We moved to Oregon. I've lived in Idaho.
Oregon?
I've lived in Oregon. See, and that's the thing. You don't even
I
know
didn't
who
know any of these things.
I am. Yeah.
Let me hear your Idaho accent then. Can you take it? Let me hear it. Can I hear your Idaho? I'm sorry, I messed you up.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're not.
Can I hear the Idaho?
This is all you get. No matter if it's up north or down south, it's still the same.
Oh, good, Lord. Okay, I didn't know Oregon or Idaho, but
I did,
right.
And there's a story behind that, right? There's a story to that. But in my life, I have always had to be flexible and move with a sense of urgency. I don't walk slow. I don't think slow. Everything is with a sense of urgency, but it's not because that's the way I want it to be. That's the way it had to be in order for me to survive in my environment, right? So that has really taken toll and played a major impact on who I am. And then from that, I'm the first person in, my family to go to a 4-year college and get a degree. My mother never graduated from high school. So there's so many things that play a part into my makeup. And that's why I value education so much. That's why when I go into classrooms, I get so pissed off if I see a teacher just sitting behind the desk, because I used to be that little girl there that needed a touch, that needed somebody to say something to them. I was that kid that fell through the cracks. Never in the office, no referrals, no disciplinary issues, nothing like that. But I had pain and scars that no one knew about, because I didn't have teachers that took the time. So I felt like now it's my mission. And because I do have the title and some form of power, I have to make sure that my babies are taken care of. And so at the end of the day, nothing else matters but what's going to help the children be successful. And that can never be done without the power of the teacher in the classroom. So thank you for talking about that.
No, absolutely. Just kind of closing up here and thinking about everything that we were talking about, what motivates you to keep going?
I had never seen, I'm going to take that back. I was going to say I had never seen my mother or father quit, but I'm not going to say that. I've seen both. I've seen what happens when they quit. And I knew I did not want to have to live like that. And then I've seen what it looks like when they put their all into it. And I knew that I had that in me. And I knew that I had to keep pushing, because I had to set an example for those that were coming behind me. I had to make sure that I modeled what excellence looked like, because I had people watching me. And even more than that, failure was just never an option. Excellence was the only option. And that was instilled in me. And that's just what I had to live on. I couldn't quit. I can't quit. Won't quit. Don't stop.
And in closing with thoughts here, I think it's crucial and important to realize that your thoughts are things, and the way you think is how you act, and the way you act is what you attract. And so as a leader, who you want to be starts with your values. And so if you're putting your values out there, you're doing that, but you have to model it. And then you have to use those values to inspire a shared vision. And so inspiring a shared vision may look different in different places, but at the same time, it comes back to you as the head and you as the foundation. And again, the way you think is how you act, and the way you act is what you attract. So you will put the right people around you. You will attract the right things if you lead with the right attitude. And so I'm hopeful that people tune in to the next episode, No Justice, No Peace, and that will be airing immediately afterwards. And check us out on our YouTube channel, Vulnerable Voices, and we will also be on all podcast platforms as well. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you next episode.
Peace.